The NBA schedule has been released, ladies and gentlemen. We now get to see some of the marquee matchups, plan our lives around the Bulls schedule, all that good stuff. The only downside being, well, we still have to wait another 2 months before we actually get to see any regular season game. But be that as it may, it still gives us an opportunity to see which games we should be looking out for, or maybe even plunk some money down and attend if you live in the Chicago area. Or if you're like me and live in the Bay Area, you can now mark your calendar when the Bulls will be coming to town to face the defending champions. So in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the Bulls schedule, key games that you definitely are going to want to watch out for, and also shedding some light on some aspects of the schedule that are a little different than last season and could present some challenges for the Bulls. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy the content, be sure to subscribe, as it means a great deal to me, and in turn, I'll be covering the Bulls all season long. So to ensure that you don't miss a video, subscribing and turning on the bell notifications is a good way to do that. I'm also trying to hit 30,000 subscribers before the start of the season, so we'll see if we can get there in the next 2 months, and I'll be doing a big giveaway once we actually get there, so stay tuned for that. But anyway, let's talk about the Bulls schedule for this upcoming season. If you're a diehard Bulls fan like myself, you know you're going to be watching all 82 games, but if you're just looking for the big games that are going to be the most fun to watch, then you come to the right place, as I'll highlight, in my view, what are going to be the best games. Now, first and foremost, let's pull up the month of October, and you'll see the Bulls open up their season in Miami on October 19th, which will hopefully prove to be a better season opener than last year when the Bulls played the Pistons. That being said, though, we saw how much the Bulls struggled against the Heat last season in getting swept by Miami in the regular season. The Heat finished with the best record in the East last year, but I don't think the Heat are going to be as dangerous as they were last season, unless they trade for Kevin Durant. That could obviously make a difference. But with Lowry getting older and looking like a shell of himself, Jimmy also getting older, they're still going to be a great team, but I don't think they'll finish with the best record in the East. Then the Bulls will have their home opener on Saturday, October 22nd against the Cavs. I was kind of hoping we'd see a bigger matchup for the home opener, say against the Bucks or maybe the Celtics, but the home opener is always a fun one just because the energy in the United Center is at its peak as the home fans get to see their team back in action for the first time in over 6 months. And hey, the Cavs are going to be a fun and up-and-coming team this year, and they've got a lot of young talent between Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen, and of course, Bulls legend Lauri Markkanen. Yes, that was sarcasm. But then the Bulls follow up that game going against the defending East champs and the Boston Celtics at home, which will be another big test for the Bulls to show that they can really compete against the best teams in the league, as the biggest criticism the Bulls have really received all of last year was that although they looked like a good team to start the year, they simply could not beat the best teams in the NBA, finishing the year, I believe it was, what, 1-17 against the top 3 teams in each conference, which is why you had so many people calling the Bulls pretenders and not being on the same level as the true contending teams in the league. Now, as we go into November, I did want to highlight something that I thought was important to know, and actually I believe Casey Johnson initially called this out because this was the first thing that popped out to me when looking at the first 15 games or so. You'll notice that, one, the Bulls are going to be facing off against more playoff teams than they did to start the season last year, which is a challenge in and of itself, but also how compact their schedule is in the first 2 weeks. The Bulls are going to be playing 9 games in the first 15 days of the season. 9 games, which is actually the second most in the first 15 days of the season from any team across the league. They have 3 back-to-backs in that time span, all 3 of which are going to be traveling back-to-backs, meaning they're not playing the back-to-backs with both games being at home. I also saw this chart that someone had posted on Twitter that shows the number of back-to-backs per team, and of course the Bulls are tied for the most back-to-backs in the league, along with the Jazz, the Kings, the Clippers, and the Warriors. And then there was this chart, which I actually found more alarming, which illustrates the number of games in which a team has more rest days than their opponent. So when you go head-to-head against a team in a given game, which team has more rest days than the other, and how often is that happening for each team? And you'll see the Bulls are near the bottom, third to the last, in having more rest days than their opponent in a given game. The only teams that have fewer games in which they have more rest days than their opponent are the Hornets and the Knicks. It looks like the league is wanting to give favors out to the Lakers, Cavs, and Kings, and the Warriors are up there too, actually. The Kings, I guess that makes sense since they have been such a disaster for so long in the league, having never made the playoffs in a decade and a half. But some of the other teams, why are we giving them handouts? This is the one thing that surprises me about the league, And when they put their schedule together, like, you know, they're probably running some of these numbers and assessing which teams are getting more rest days than others. And you would think they would try and balance out schedules as much as possible, making sure that teams are getting equal amounts of back-to-backs and rest time to make the schedule as fair as possible. Also, just to avoid injuries if there are certain teams that are getting less rest than others. But no, of course not. You have these ridiculous disparities that you see in these charts, and it looks like the Bulls are getting the shorter end of the stick in this one. But whatever, Bulls should take this as a challenge and bring their A game no matter what. Moving along, I'm definitely looking forward to the game the day before Thanksgiving, when the Bulls will play Milwaukee for the first time on November 23rd in Milwaukee. First matchup since the playoffs back in April. Obviously, you'd like to see the Bulls get some revenge after a pretty embarrassing playoff series against the Bucks. Obviously, you still want to give it to Grayson Allen. I don't think the Bulls fans will ever really forget that stunt that he pulled against Alex Caruso, which really put the Bulls in a downward spiral after that with all the other injuries that they had. Then as we head into December, the game I'm looking forward to the most because I will be in attendance is on December 2nd when the Bulls will be taking on the Warriors in San Francisco. Most of you probably know by now, but I currently live in the Bay Area, and I always go see the Bulls play when they face off against the Warriors, and usually the Kings as well, which this season they're actually playing the Kings in the following game on the 4th. Might be tough for me to pull off attending back-to-back games, especially with 2 kids and a full-time job, but I'll see what I can do. For the Warriors game, I mean, anytime you get to see the Bulls go up against the defending champions and see Steph Curry play live, it's an incredible experience, although I would like to see the Bulls finally beat the Warriors, as I don't believe that has happened since, 2015? And to be honest, I'm kind of tired of seeing all the cocky shenanigans from Steph, Clay, and Draymond every time I go and see them play. So please, Bulls, pull out a W in this one. Another game I'm actually low-key excited to watch is on the 11th when the Bulls will face off against the Atlanta Hawks for the first time. We'll get to see the new-look Hawks with DeJounte Murray on the squad. I think that'll be fun and an exciting matchup with the up-and-down athletic-style offensive schemes from each team. I'm also hoping we get to see more Dosunmu on Trae Young, as Io made Trae look like an amateur baller out there last season, although I would also just like to have our normal starting point guard available and healthy in Lonzo Ball. I guess you could say I'm kind of excited to see the Bulls take on the Knicks just because I can't stand the Knicks or their fans and want to see the Bulls crush them into oblivion, but really can't say that's going to be a challenging matchup per se unless the Knicks do in fact trade for Donovan Mitchell, which is starting to look more unlikely at this point in time. Timberwolves on the 18th, that should be fun with the addition of Rudy Gobert. Gobert has always been a tough matchup for the Bulls, and now you combine that with all the other firepower they have on offense with the likes of Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, and D'Angelo Russell. Moving on into January, the Bulls face off against the Sixers in Philly, although the Bulls will have already played the Sixers at the beginning of the season. Can the Bulls finally beat Joel Embiid? Can they finally end the losing streak against Embiid? There is even talk about Kevin Durant potentially going to the Sixers, which would make them an instant title contender with the big three of Joel Embiid, Harden, and KD. Really hope that doesn't happen. The other interesting game, and I say it's interesting, is because the league is starting a new quote-unquote rivalry week in which rivals will face off against each other during the week of January 23rd, and the Bulls are being included in this in their game against the Hornets on January 26th. Yes, the classic Bulls-Hornets rivalry that has been such a long and ongoing battle between these two teams. I swear the league is just making up rivalries at this point. But no, to be fair, evidently it's supposed to be a Lonzo versus LaMelo rivalry that made this quote-unquote Rivals Week matchup, because another game featured in that week is a game between the Nuggets and Sixers, which I don't think anyone would consider that a rivalry, but evidently it's supposed to be the rivalry between Jokic and Embiid, which, to be honest, I don't know if I would consider that really a rivalry. Yes, they're the best big man in the league. It's a fun battle to watch, but there isn't like a history of tension or bad blood between those two, unless there's just something that I'm completely missing. But anyway, the Bulls will take on the Hornets on January 26th. That game will be on TNT, not a home game, which we'll get into so we can talk about the TNT Bulls continuing that winning streak. It'll still be a fun game to watch, just hope that Lonzo will actually be available to play to go against his brother. Going into February, the Bulls will have another game on TNT, still on the road though, and this will be against the Nets, who as of now, they still have Kevin Durant. They still have Ben Simmons, and they still have Kyrie Irving, so that could still prove to be a battle with the star-studded showdown between both rosters. I'm actually curious to see how Ben Simmons is going to come out and play this season after taking an entire year off, and I'm just also curious to see how the Nets use him with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, if they remain on the roster, that is. Then we've got the matchup we've been waiting for right before the All-Star break. The TNT Bulls are back, playing at home against none other than the Milwaukee Bucks. Can they keep the streak alive? The Bulls have not lost at home when playing on TNT since 2013. Now, they haven't played on TNT at home since 2017, given the Bulls were in a rebuild for so many years, but just because they never played on TNT at home all those years doesn't mean the streak dies. And that streak currently sits at 20 straight wins. Can they make it a full decade of winning on TNT at home? And can they do so against one of the teams Bulls fans despise the most right now in the Milwaukee Bucks? Let's just hope that maybe Giannis sits out that game or something to actually make this an easy win. And then as we go into March and April, I think the key things to call out here are really the strength of schedule in closing out the season and the possible jockeying for playoff positioning between all these teams, as the Bulls will be going against the Heat, the Sixers twice, the Hornets, the Hawks, and the Bucks. Not only that, but the East teams aside, they're going to have to play the Lakers twice, which maybe not so much of a challenge anymore, but they still have LeBron and Anthony Davis, and they'll still play the Clippers, the Blazers, the Grizzlies, and the Mavericks, all of which are in the last 10 games of the season. So it's not like the Bulls are just going to be able to take their foot off the gas at the end of the year like they did last season. Seeding and going against teams looking to win to position themselves well in the playoffs will come down to the wire. But yeah, that's the schedule. In a very high level, consolidated nutshell, I did also see the Bulls have the 12th hardest strength of schedule according to Positive Residual, and the Bulls also have 14 nationally televised games this season between NBA TV, ESPN, and TNT. That is actually the most nationally televised games the Bulls have had since the 2011-12 season, which was the season following Derrick Rose winning the MVP, and of course it was also the season in which he tore his ACL in the playoffs. But this is a huge step up when you think about just 4 years ago the Bulls had all but one nationally televised game, and it speaks a lot to the level of competition and intrigue the Bulls have across the league to actually be on national TV that many times throughout the season. And hopefully the Bulls can get back to being a team you see regularly on the national scene and also back on the Christmas Day schedule. Yes, I'm still a little bitter the Bulls didn't get the nod to play on Christmas while a team like the freaking Knicks did. But anyway, I just hope the guys can stay healthy, build on that chemistry and momentum of having another year playing together. I cannot wait for the season to begin. These 2 months cannot go by fast enough. But let me know what you guys thought of the Bulls schedule. Let me know which games you're going to be looking forward to most. Until then, guys, as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.